This is April 21st, 2022. This is a video diary so that all of you can learn more about me. It's been a while since I've done one of these videos, but it's time to sort of refreshen some people's minds and pick up where we left off. And for others, I'll probably repeat some of the story. Actually, I know I will because I'm going to start at the beginning. Um, for those of you that aren't familiar with it and my experiences and my journey on this planet, because um, it's pertinent for you to understand who I am in order to truly understand that you can trust what I've learned, trust what I have to share with you, and then learn to trust yourself even deeper, even stronger. So I'm what they call a starseed. Um, I believe in reincarnation. I feel like I volunteered to be reincarnated in this time that we're in. I can remember being very small, 2, 3, 4 years old, and telling my parents that, well, I told my parents lots of very strange things, but the main key thing that I told them was that I came here for something that people would start to call a great awakening. And when I was little, I seemed very excited about that title, that term, even though I really didn't understand the scope of it in my little young mind. But now that I'm older, I understand that my higher self already knew it. And that's where the excitement came from. My parents learned very early on that I'm what they termed gifted. And I always really had a great aversion to that term. I didn't feel more special than anyone else. And I didn't understand why everyone else couldn't do what I did. So that was really the bulk of my journey, was understanding human consciousness and the human condition, and why is it that everyone else can't do what I do. I've learned, of course, since then that this is through conditioning. This is through, for lack of a better term, brainwashing of socialism, right? This society mindset of who we should be, how we should be, how we should think, how we should dress, how we should act, how we should react, what we're allowed to learn, so on and so forth. This funneled down through our educational systems, our religious centers, our familial lineages, even because our parents and their parents before them were indoctrinated into this societal pattern that we were supposed to follow, to become our teachers, our greatest teachers in this. I went through a period of my life, I'm just going to briefly say, in my learning and understanding, I went through a brief period of being very angry at all of the people that I trusted in my past, my teachers, my preachers, my Sunday school teachers, my parents, my older siblings, even. I was very angry at so many people for these lies that have been perpetuated onto us. But that was before I came to the understanding that they also were perpetuated with these lies and this indoctrination. And so it's not their fault that they didn't have the eyes to see or the ears to hear, to look for the truth in it. They just trusted the way that they were supposed to. On the surface, it sounded right, it sounded good, so they just trusted it. You can't fault others. Even now, the ones who refuse to wake up, you can't fault them for who they are. It's not their time on their journey or whatever at this moment for them to learn it. Now, back to my experiences. So as a very young child, I had a lot of really bizarre experiences. I could um, leave my body in my dream state and remote view or visit um, the locations that we would be going to the next day or in a few days for family outings and vacations, things like that. My dad always surrounded us with history on our vacations. We always went to vacation spots where we could learn something, whether it was survival or history or understanding the waterways, the locks and dams. I mean, he took us to lots of strange family outings and vacations, which benefited me and enriched me greatly. But at the time, as a child, I didn't really understand the purpose of calling it a vacation or a family outing, unless we went to the fisheries and stuff. And I really liked going there. But I would see these places before we went. And then as we go there, I would describe to my parents what it was going to look like, who would be there, things we would see, stuff we were going to be able to do. And it really just blew their mind, that I could do this. Also, I could potentially, if in the right state of the right emotional state, move objects, make things happen, and like a type of telekinesis. I really didn't understand how to use it, and some things would go awry, things would fly off the counter and, hit people or whatever. And so then I did start really feeling different because no one else around me could do those things. And so I really needed to understand that deeper. Well, then I started about the age of 6 is the first time I really recall. Well, let me back up just a bit. When I realized that I was going to have to go to public school at about the age of 5, it was like when I went to get my booster shots to go to kindergarten. When that really hit me that I was going to have to go to public school, I was freaking out. I was so mad. I was so mad for coming back here. I can remember thinking that. I would stand in the front yard and stare up at the bright blue sky and wish as hard as I could that I could go back home. And my father came out one evening, and I guess he had been watching me stand there for quite some time. He came out and he asked me, "What am I doing?" And I said, "I'm wishing to go home." And he said, "What's that mean? Where's home? Do you mean like heaven?" And my dad wasn't a Christian. My dad did not believe in any type of religious faith. He was on his own path to understand spirituality, but would not influence us children. Excuse me. With his beliefs, he would simply ask us questions about things we were thinking or saying or feeling. But he said, "What do you mean by that? Like heaven?" And I'm like, "No, I don't mean to heaven. I mean where I came from. I want to go back home. You're not really my parents, and I just want to go back to my parents. I changed my mind. I don't want to do this school again. So I want to just go home." And he's kind of looked at me really bizarre and was like, "Okay, kiddo, I don't know what you're thinking, but I am your dad, and it's time to come in and wash up for supper, and that's your home over there." So, I'm kind of loosely, he teased me about it, I guess, but you could tell by the look in his eye that he's like filing that away in the back of his head to think about later. So then at about the age of 6, I remember is like my first memories of having encounters with beings from another dimension or another place, another time or place. That's the way I'll say it. And so I just noticed that my screen was flashing for some reason. That's strange. So I remember having encounters. I remember bright lights coming to the bedroom window to get me. I remember that I would leave with the bright lights, and then I can remember being on the floor in a very large, nicely lit room, very well lit, no shadows, um, but you couldn't really see the light source. You couldn't see where it was coming from. In the room, I would be on the floor because I'm sitting in a group with some other children. And there were several groups of children on the floor or at little small tables all around me. It was like a learning center of sorts. I don't really want to call it school because it wasn't like school. It wasn't rigorous and structured like that. It was more loose and comfortable, and we were assigned a specific group to be in, and we were assigned a certain task to learn and then try to perform. So in these groups, I can recall being taught telekinesis and telepathy and remote viewing, and for the past and the present, by the way, not just remote viewing the future, but, or yeah, I said past and present, I meant past and future. Not just remote viewing the future, but also being able to go back and see the past. And in so also learning and understanding that everything is recorded in a sense. Every detail of everything that's ever happened is recorded, so to speak. It's not physically recorded. It's not a piece of machinery that records it. It's not an all-knowing God that created us that knows it, not in the way you're thinking anyway. I came to understand that this is like a network, and it's like cellular memory, right? And that's how, when you're reincarnated, you have X amount of memory from the past life when you're young until the indoctrination kicks in. And then all of that memory falls away because you're too busy being, funneled and tunnel vision into what's going on in this lifetime. But if we raised our children with more of an emphasis on nurturing that wisdom that they come with, I think we would all, as a whole of humanity, be better off eventually in our future from doing that, because we would be able to use the tools that we've brought with us into a new lifetime, to flourish further in this lifetime, rather than forgetting the lessons and going back to square one. Which is why I think I remember all that I remember. I feel like I was meant to remember because I am one of the volunteers who were tasked with trying to share this message. And it's been a very difficult journey in trying to share that message, I might add, because, for various reasons, but the main one is that a lot of people just don't want to believe it, especially people within your own family. And I'm sure many of you have learned by now, if you're an empath or an intuitive, instinctively, naturally, to where it flows easy for you. Chances are you are starseed as well. And chances are also that you've faced ridicule and turmoil from your closest family members for being who you are. So, with that being said, I can remember at the age of 6 being the earliest that I was visited. Now, as far as memories of strange things that have went on can go, we could go all the way back to the age of 3, when my parents first moved us from Indiana to Arkansas. Our first few years, we lived in this one small house that we didn't own. It was like an option to buy type home. And I have very vivid memories of going into the backyard, into what I called a hobbit house, and going down the steps into a home that was under the ground to play with a little blonde-haired girl that lived in my backyard with her dad. Now, I can remember going there multiple times and playing with this little girl, um, and her father letting me in, or her letting me in to their little hobbit house that was at the back of our backyard. Now, my mother, my brothers, and my father all say that that house did not exist. So, how do I have so many memories of going to play with this little girl? I mean, I could draw a picture of this little girl and her dad. I could tell you exactly what they looked like. I could tell you exactly what their home looked like inside and out, and what we did while we were there. Because we usually just sat on the side of her bed and played dolls, and I would eat dinner with them. I remember eating dinner with them. You know, I never stayed past dark. I never spent the night with her, and she never came to my house to play. Oddly enough, which I didn't think was odd when I was a little kid because I was only 3. But to look back on it, that is a strange thing. So my memories of weird happenings can go back at least as far as 3 with that particular set of memories that I have that everyone swears wasn't there. Um, so then fast forward a little bit, by the time I was 8, 7, maybe, I think I was 7 actually, I had my encounter in our public park that we lived across the street from. And when we bought a home, when I was about 4, we had moved to this house that was directly across the street from the park, the city park. And it was a beautiful park full of pecan trees, flat land you could see for miles. And frequently I would go over there and play alone. You know, my mother did upholstery work, and my father was a riverboat captain, and she worked at the house. So for us to get out of the house away from her where she could work, we would just go out and play in the yard or down at the neighbors or wherever. At the park, I went to the park a lot. Everyone knew everyone in those days. You know, that was the 70s and early 80s. It was perfectly normal to let your children run all over town because everybody knew you, right? And everybody was going to be watching out for your kids. Um, that was before we were too far indoctrinated, right? Things were a lot different then. Anyway, I remember having an encounter in the park with this really beautiful um, older teenage girl named Alanis. And I've told this story before. You can go back and check my other videos for it. She was the epitome of beautiful. She was perfect from head to toe, golden blonde hair, perfect almond shaped blue eyes, perfect skin tone, nice dark complexion, just beautiful girl. Perfect physique, muscular, you know, thick, but not like not an ounce of fat on her. But she wasn't skinny either. She was just very healthy and athletic looking. And she was wearing tank top and short cut off shorts, and then had a cast up to her thigh on one leg, and crutches. And I was drawn to her. She was so beautiful. I was drawn to her. And she was in the shelter house, what we call a shelter house, which is a bunch of picnic tables with like a roof over it, right? And like a fireplace inside there and stuff. Um, we call it a shelter house because you can be at the picnic tables in any kind of weather. So she's sitting there, and I walked straight up to her. I mean, we had locked eyes from the time I stepped into the park, which is probably at least 500 yards. It was a good little walk. But I walked straight up to her, sat down, started a conversation with her. I noticed that she didn't have any signatures on her cast. And that was a very odd thing for me because everybody has signatures on their cast, you know, get well signatures. And so I asked her about that, and she didn't know what I meant. She didn't know about it. Um, I asked her where she was from, and she said that she was from far away from here. She had this very melodic, musical type voice to her that just enchanted me. Um, so I'm gonna cut this story short because I've already told it before and I want to get to some more stuff. But long story short, this very well dressed albino man in the perfect three-piece suit of a man in black approached our shelter house with two shorter beings next to him. Shorter people is what I would say for a long time because I could not recall what they looked like or who they were. I just remembered that they were there. It was almost like they were invisible, but you could feel their presence, is how I put it in my memory. And he was very frightening to me. He had pink eyes, red, like reddish eyes. He pulled his sunglasses down and showed me his eyes. It was very scary to me. Felt like a cyborg, and I didn't even know what a cyborg was then, but that's what I felt like. I felt like he was part machine, that he wasn't a real human. Um, and just on the surface, I didn't know why I would even think that of him. I just know I was scared of him. And so um, she told me, don't worry, he can't hurt you while I'm here. And she said it almost giggling, and I was just like, that's whacked. I got to go. So I jumped up and I was like, I think I hear my mom calling. And I took off running for the house and I'm looking back over and waving. Nice to meet you. I hope I see you again someday. She's standing up waving at me, telling me, you will, and goodbye. And like, as soon as I got to the edge of the park and stepped out on our street, all of my neighbors are out on the street. My brothers had come over. They didn't live with us anymore. They were older and had moved out. They were around looking for me. Everybody was looking for me. It was like the whole neighborhood was searching for me. And they started yelling and screaming, oh my God, there she is, and grabbed me up. And then I was in trouble because they hadn't been able to find me for like 3 hours. And I'm like, no, I was there like 15 minutes. And I was just right there. And they're like, no, you weren't. And we've been looking for you for 3 hours and blah, blah, blah. And they were really mad at me and I got in trouble. Um, Everybody was glad I was safe. I just couldn't understand it. So that was like my first real missing time moment. I've since then gotten regression and realized that this particular man was like a mind swiper, men in black mind swiper. His job, specifically his job, was to find all of us starseeds and swipe our memory of why we're there, why we're here, right? For this great awakening. And I didn't understand that at first, but I understand the timelines fuddling down to just one timeline, like the Hopi and the Mayans, the Inca, and several Aztecs. Several have their own prophecies of these timelines, like the high road and the low road. But it's a timeline funneling down, and then you put the whole cube business into play, and um, Project Looking Glass, and um, Yellow Book, and the black cube and things like that. And then you start fitting all the pieces together and you're like, okay, wait a minute, that was one of those ploys to stop this, right? Because nothing can stop what is coming. Nothing can stop this great awakening from happening and us learning and gaining our true innate God-given power and ability. So they were here to mind swipe us. And so then that also explains to me, if there's so many starseeds, why are there so few who've retained the memory of the volunteering to come, the purpose of being here? And so now I understand. They probably got mind swiped. But they didn't get us all. Because some of us had extra double duty protection or something. Thank God. Thank God. I don't feel lucky for myself. I feel lucky for our collective. I would feel just as grateful if it weren't me, but it was someone else. And I am each time I see another being speaking um, the wisdom that I know, Cryon included. The guy that channels Cryon even has the exact same information that I was given, but I don't channel it like he does. I just know it already. And, but that doesn't lessen my gratitude for him having the same wisdom I have, because for me, that's confirmation, you know, through this journey, because of all of the experiences I've had, which are numerous. I mean, I've seen 13 different craft. 13. Most people are lucky to see one. But with all of that, and then all of the other strange paranormal experiences that I've encountered and have had to deal with, and then my own life lessons to learn and narcissistic behavior that I had to deal with from numerous people, parentals, siblings, friendships, relationships, you know, on and on, co-workers, bosses. There were many things in my life that challenged me. And so for me to continue to walk in my knowing and my faith, sometimes I would have to check myself and be like, am I crazy? Is this real? Like, what the hell? You know? So for me, when I hear people like the man, forgive me for not remembering his name, who channels Cryon, or Greg Brady, Nassim Haramein, some really great people, and I can't think of all their names right off the top of my head, but they're all saying the same thing I've always known. Nassim Haramein has proven the science behind it, which is beautiful and fantastic, because that's what we need. But, you know, it's confirmation to keep going on this path and to keep trying to reach you and teach you. So that's what I'm going to keep doing. And so back to the stories, the experiences. I can also remember around the age of 8, 9, 10, 11, my brother and I, when we would go to stay the weekends with our father after our parents divorced, we would have to share a full-size bed together at my dad's house. And we had numerous arguments in the night where my father would threaten to come in and whip us if we didn't quit, where we were like arguing and debating who it was that was making the bed vibrate and shake furiously. And I mean furiously. The bed would shake, like really shake, to where your voice would tremble, right? Talking to each other and yelling at each other. And he would yell, quit it. And I'd say, I'm not doing it. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. You are. You know, we would just go back and forth. And now I realize that we were actually both being taken when that shaking was happening. Because as an adult, I've had numerous experiences of abduction where at the onset, either time and sound slows down to where everything is slowed. I mean, like even the music you hear is slowed down. It's a creepy, eerie feeling, and there's like this strange static around you and stuff. Just a weirdness. Your ears pop. I mean, it's a weird feeling, but in scientific explanation of it, the vortex is being created where the portal is opening for them to like beam you up, you know, for lack of a better word of saying that there. And so the air pressure, the barometric pressure and everything is changing in order to excite the atoms in the proper way for this to take place. So we were We were being abducted, but we were arguing with each other at the risk of getting whipped, um, because this vibration would agitate us greatly with fear. And we didn't know why we were scared. We just knew this wasn't normal, and um, we couldn't remember what would happen afterwards until we woke up being dropped back in our bed. And I mean, we would like wake up with a jolt. Both of us would wake up with a jolt. A lot of times my brother would have nosebleeds, severe nosebleeds in the middle of the night after these occurrences. And later in life, when I had children, my sons, all of my sons were typically the ones that would have the severe nighttime nosebleeds. So, and I still don't understand that. What's the difference between male and female with the nosebleed thing? Is there something different in the blood-brain barrier area of the nose membranes for females that's slightly angled different or something than boys? Or are the boys getting nasal probed more often than the girls? I mean, I don't know what the answer to that is there, but it begs a serious question. And I can remember my own fair share of nasal probes and something being injected into my eye as well. And I'll get to that in a moment. But yeah, so we had sightings as a family when I was young, where we would see an orb in the sky or a bright light in the sky, and my dad would say it's probably a UFO, but I didn't really know what that meant. I didn't know what aliens really were per se. There wasn't really like a lot of shows or movies about it in those days, until the movie ET came out. I had never really seen anything with aliens in it other than a TV show called Land of the Lost. And I didn't even realize that they were aliens when I watched that show, those Sleestack. But I knew that when I would see them, they would scare me to death. And it was like the worst B-rated or C-rated TV show you could imagine. But I was absolutely terrified of those terrible costumes that they wore to be the Sleestack, which was like a type of lizard people, that R word. And I would be absolutely scared out of my mind over this Sleestack, and I didn't know why until later in life. And so then flash forward, I'm driving. I'm old enough to drive now. I'm 16, going on 17. I'm driving my mom's 5-speed, and I had borrowed it, took my boyfriend with me to pay a lady that I was making payments to buy my very own first car. I bought a Maverick for my very first car, 1972 Maverick. And we were on our way back from paying her my next to last installment on the car, and coming down a very steep hill on the road, and we could see this really huge bright light off to my right, off to the right side of the road. And I kept saying to my boyfriend at the time, what is that bright light? What is it? It's getting really close and it's really big. And all of a sudden my car completely stopped on the incline, right? And it's a 5-speed. So like it shouldn't have just sat there, but it did. It just like froze and totally shut off. The radio shut off, the engine shut off, the headlights shut off, and this bright light came over top of the car. And I mean, it was like it flooded the whole area with bright light. And then we felt this very weird tingling energy and vibration happening. And we're just both staring at this light. We're not seeing anything. Well, the next thing we remember, we're back in the car and the car starts on its own. And I'm just like in my usual driving position, foot off the clutch, foot on the gas, heading down the hill. like nothing ever happened. And I get to the stop sign, and at the bottom of the hill, I get to the stop sign, and I said one thing to him. I said, I'm going to take you straight home, and then I'm going to go straight home. And he said, okay. And that was the last thing we said to each other the whole ride home. And that was like a 14 to 20 mile, about 20 miles total to take him home and then get back to my house. It was about 20 miles of a trip. Never said another word to each other. Never looked at each other, nothing. I pulled up in his driveway. He got out of the car. I never said goodbye. We didn't kiss goodbye, nothing. He got out. I waited for him to walk in front of my headlights, put it in reverse, backed out, went straight home. I get to my house, and my mother is frantic, worried to death, and furious with me. And I'm like, why are you mad at me? What's going on? And she's like, where the hell have you been? Blah, blah, blah. Don't you know how long you've been gone? Don't you know what time it is? And I'm like, well, it can't be later than 9:30 because we left the lady's house at 9. And she's like, no, it's midnight. And I'm like, no, it's not. It can't be more than just like 9:30. And she's like, no, Kelly, it's midnight. Where the hell have you been? And I'm like, I don't know where I've been, Mom. I swear to you, this is what happened. And I told her the story. Like, we got there, we talked a few minutes, we gave her the money, she gave me the receipt. I got back in the car, we headed down the hill, we saw a bright light. We stopped for a minute, looked at the bright light. We came on home. I dropped him straight off. I come straight home. Boom, nothing. And she's like, you're lying. That is not what all you did. You've been up to no good. You've done something. And I'm like, no, I swear. I got grounded from the car for the next 2 weeks. I got grounded from leaving my house for the next 2 weeks. I didn't talk to my boyfriend for the next 2 weeks. And then when we did talk again, we never mentioned this again. I ended up marrying that man and having 2 children with him. We never had this conversation about what happened that night with the lights. Never. It wasn't until about 10 years later, when I had had another experience, that I realized that was missing time. And I realized we both got abducted. Now, that's not to say there was nothing in my mind about it after it happened, because that next 2 weeks that I was grounded, I was frantically and furiously drawing this tall white being in a silver robe, a silver cloak, that had this beautiful tall staff that he carried with him, with a great big beautiful ball on the top of it, and this fabulous, like almost like a dragon claw kind of deal, holding the crystal ball. And this staff was like twisted. It was just the most badass, beautiful, amazing staff I had ever seen. And I would have these reoccurring dreams of laying on a table in a very well lit room with ambient light, no light fixtures anywhere, and several grays, what we would call tall grays, around me on this sort of like operating type table. And I felt as if I was strapped down, but there were no straps. It was like I was paralyzed. I was immobile. I couldn't even speak with my voice, but I was screaming and cussing them in telepathy. And I was giving them hell. I was giving them 10 kinds of hell. I was a little spitfire, you know. I only weighed about 68 pounds when I was not, maybe 78. When I was 16, I've always been a tiny person. I'm still small. I'm still a tiny person, but I was a firecracker, and I was thinking all kinds of stuff in my head, telling them all kinds of stuff. And I finally yelled out, well, okay, after they put the probe up the right side of my nose, and the other thing went into my eyeball behind my pupil, I was like, oh, hell with all this. I'm going to tell my daddy, and my daddy's going to kick your asses. Period. This is going to happen. I'm going to find you, and he's going to kick your ass. That's what's going to happen. I was mad as hell. I didn't want no more of this. They had done enough already. And then that was like, that was too much. I was over it. So this tall white walks over from behind me, walks up to the head of my table, which was facing the larger area of the room, like the center of the room is where my head was facing. My feet were facing toward a wall and like a counter type thing. And he walks up to me and he's got this fabulous staff, and I can see him. I can move my eyeballs around, and I can see him standing there. And he speaks to me in telepathy, and he says, "My child, we mean you no harm. Please calm down." And like immediately, I'm just like, calm, like boom. Like, I don't know if he hypnotized me or what he did, but immediately I was calm. But in my mind, I'm still thinking, why is he calling me his child? Why is he speaking to me that way? Who the hell does he think he is? Wait till I tell my daddy about all this. Right? But I didn't remember it on the surface. They had to like mindswipe me, right? But they didn't get it all because it's playing out in my dreams every night. I was seeing it in my dreams, and I was drawing these pictures, and I was like obsessed, really. I was obsessed. And then after that, I couldn't sleep at night. I would constantly check the windows and the doors, make sure they were locked. I wouldn't go sit outside on the porch anymore after dark. I was scared of the dark all of a sudden. I mean, just my behavior completely changed. I didn't want to go places. Yeah, I was almost 17 years old. You know, I was a cheerleader, the whole deal. Like, I was an out there kind of girl. I loved being around people, loved making them laugh, have fun. And all of a sudden, just no, I just don't care to go anywhere, do anything. I just wasn't about that life anymore. Everything changed. Everything drastically changed after that. So that was like my first real transition into waking up to who I am. Because, you know, until then, all these other weird things that had happened to me in life, they just couldn't be explained. And it was clearly different than everybody else. So I don't know, I guess I was just assumed skip it, honestly. But then, you know, that was like my real waking up, becoming more aware transition right at 17. And that's when I started seeing more triangle craft, more saucer crafts. My brother also would see them. That's very close to my age. He and I grew up together while the other 5 were already pretty much grown by the time I came along. And so life happened, and numerous strange things still happened yet from there. When I gave birth to my first child at the age of 18, she was born dead, born blue. And this bright blue light came into the room and revived her, and then also rejuvenated me, because they were also losing me because I was bleeding to death. I was hemorrhaging, and all of their attention was on her. So she was already gone, and I was falling away. And this blue ball of light came in the room. I watched it hover above her, and as she started to cry and came back to life. And then I seen it come over me and spread out like in the shape of a cigar above me, and remained there, and then pulsated into a red light and then a pink type light as they focused more. Some of them focused more on me then and was doing things with me. And we both came out of it fine. Um, I started having I've always had numerous paranormal experiences with ghosts. I can see ghosts. I can hear them when they speak to me. I can speak back to them. I can see them very clearly and descriptively. Um, they tell me things that they don't explain why they're saying it. I just have to like relay it to whoever they're wanting to know. Um, which I was always very scared to do because I didn't have a clue what I was talking about. I just knew that I was supposed to say what I heard, which proved to be something someone else that needed that message understood. So I started trusting that more as I got older. Um, Interestingly enough, being an empath, I also have learned that I have the greatest bullshit radar known to man because with being an empath, you actually are like absorbing other people's energy and their frequency, right? Sometimes even to the point where you will sort of begin to mimic them and their behavior in certain situations when they're around, when they're near, sort of like a chameleon thing. And it took me a while to understand this, but um, when people say they're rubbing off on you, they really are. Their energy really does interfere with yours, interact with yours, whether you realize it or not. So when you're picking up on that and you know yourself well, then you can check yourself and be like, this is not my behavior, this is theirs. And it helps you to tune in better to who they are. And then also with learning that, you learn to read the energy signatures and the vibrations and how they make you feel when you pick them up from other people in the room, um, to help you gauge, their sincerity or their bullshit, for lack of a better way to say that. And so, yeah, those are things that I teach in my courses and on my website if you want to learn more about that and dig into that further. Um, so I've had many ghost experiences. I've seen shadow men. Um, we actually befriended the shadow man that lived in our home with us and our children as I raised my first 5 children out of 7. I have 7 children. And he was kind of like, the pet ghost, the house ghost. He was kind, he was protective. When our house burned down, he even followed us to the hotel and was there with us for the entire length of our stay until our new home was ready, protecting us. And I've experienced jinn. I've experienced several things that reside in the woods that would be put under the term of cryptozoology. And I don't like to really say their names too much because there's power in a name. So I'm just going to go through them real quickly one time is all I'm going to mention it. And if you're interested, you can leave a comment and I'll be reminded to speak of those occurrences in another video. But one of them is a skinwalker, another is a werewolf, another is a wendigo, Sasquatch, of course. I've had many encounters with Sasquatch from the time I was a little kid and in many, many locations. And just as a side note, the 3-letter agency known as the N and then the S and then the A place in the late 90s, before they realized that we were brave enough to just walk right into their vaults that they had online for the public to easily walk in on, I discovered a list of, at that time, 57 known species and subspecies. And we're talking about like aliens, interdimensional or extraterrestrial beings that have visited our planet. And Bigfoot was on that list. And I really got mad about it, um, because I didn't, when I was younger, I didn't think of Bigfoot as an alien of any type. Um, I just felt like they were another indigenous type of human species on this planet that, like the Neanderthal man or something that, or the giants that were spoke of old, um, that have just lived off the grid this whole time and survived. I mean, why couldn't they? Absolutely, why couldn't they? Look at this lush land that we have all around us. So I really firmly felt that they are not alien. And I held to that belief until I learned to, in order to properly follow the scientific method, you cannot have a belief system. You merely have theories and hypotheses that await something to prove or disprove them. So now that I live by the scientific method, uh, I've opened up the possibilities of someone proving that to me. And there are some uh, interesting correlations that go along with Bigfoot, you know, seeing the balls of light or the UFOs above the area, or how they'll vanish seemingly into thin air, like they've walked into another dimension. They never get caught on camera. I've tried on my deer cam. I mean, I even have put food out um, near the deer cam to try to get their photo or a video of them, and something always happens to the damn video to where it doesn't take the picture, or it's blurred with this weird fog or like water molecule looking stuff in the whole view. I mean, the only one I got that was any good was in a set of 3, there was a pair of large slanted eyes in one of the foggy pictures, but I don't know what causes the fog either. So, um, I'm open to the idea that maybe Bigfoot is an alien. And there was also those pictures and video or whatever from the Mars rover that showed that one Bigfoot looking thing on the cliff that they claim never happened now. They scrubbed it from the internet, but I totally saw that with my own eyes. So that lends credence to possible alien origins. And that may be very well why the government wants to deny them and keep them secret too. Maybe because they know they're an alien. So I've had my fair share of interactions with Sasquatch. I do come from a Native American family. I was raised with very Native American principles that you don't take more than you need from the land. You always give thanks for what you've taken, and you always give back 3 times as much as you took, to keep life in perpetual balance. So, which also on my journeys has led me to come to the conclusion that the Georgia Guidestones are not a bad thing. There's really nothing on those Guidestones that sounds nefarious to me. They're not telling you to kill people. They're not telling you to wipe out a population. They're saying that whenever it happens again, and cataclysms happen, large populations of the planet get wiped out from time to time from cyclical things. And they're saying to keep us in perpetual balance with nature this time and not be a cancer on it. And I mean, let's face it, guys, we all in some way or another feel like human beings have been a cancer on this earth, whether it's through pollution of the earth itself, the water, or the air, or the toxins we put in our food, the amount of buildings and cities that we take up and cause the wildlife to not have anywhere to live, so on and so forth. I mean, we've been a real pest. We've been a real pest to this planet. And so we do need to be in perpetual balance with nature. We do need to respect all life on this planet, because this planet sustains us. So we should want to sustain it So I don't think those guide stones are a bad thing. Um, where was I with that? Right. Okay. So Sasquatch is real. Um, I've had many encounters with them. I'll tell you some stories about that later. I also have a Bigfoot channel now called Deja Brew Paranormal Research. Um, I have the link on my info stuff for the description and on my YouTube channel if you're interested in checking that out. Because we actually have like Bigfoots living in our woods right behind our house currently. They've been there for 2 or 3 years, but they're getting braver now where they're coming up inside of our garage and around our house quite a bit. I have a footprint in my garage on the drywall. It's crazy. It's 17 inches long and almost 6 inches wide. Crazy stuff. But like that kind of stuff happens to me all the time. You know, I've had encounters with black-eyed people, and most people say black-eyed children, but no, this was a grown-ass man. And it was like one of those Highlander moments where as soon as I walked in the building, he snapped his head and locked eyes with me. Like he felt my energy. He felt my light, you know? And I knew immediately when we locked eyes that this was going to be a stare down, you know, and I wasn't going to let him think I was fearful of him. I mean, I really stood my own with this total stranger with completely black eyes in a full crowded business building. Never blinked, never took my eyes off of him the entire time I was walking to my destination within the inside the building. And as soon as I got around the corner, I fell apart. You know, I was just like, holy God sakes, what did I just see? What is that? Right. And so then I regained my composure and I stepped back around the corner to look at him again. And he's gone. He's like totally gone. He's already left the building. So many strange encounters in my life and many miraculous things I've witnessed as well on my journey in learning who I am so that I can better teach you who you are. And we'll get to those stories either, but there's numerous stories, miraculous stories, miracles that I've done, miracles that I've witnessed other people do, because we are so much more than we are told that we are. And I know how to teach you how to use that, how to utilize that, and effectively apply it to your daily life. This is not bullshit. This is not woo-woo. This is not new age. This is good old-fashioned, old school, old ways, God-given. This is that spark of God that we're all taught we have. That's simple. So if you want to learn more, go to my website, join some of my classes, sign up for a session, get your aura read. Let's find out where you come from, who you are, what strengths you have, and what lessons you have to learn yet. Let's get you on track for your destination of your destiny point. Because I can do that. And I need you to know who I am and know that I'm a real person, real flesh and blood. I bleed just like you do. I burp, sneeze, fart, the whole deal, just like everybody else. I'm a real person. I just came back here with the memories of who we are and why we are and where we came from. I don't claim to be the only one that has these answers. And you're going to know that my answers that I did find are truth because it's going to resonate and ring true with you. We were past these little sayings, these folklore sayings like, does it ring true? And rubbing off on you. He's rubbing off on you. She's rubbing off on you. Careful what you wish for. We were taught these things passed down through the oral traditions, just as they've always done, that still have meaning. We just forgot to look for the meaning. We forgot to look for why they're still told, why they're still used, and what do they mean. and I know what they mean, and I can help you um, apply that if you're ready and you're willing. I'm excited to do that. I'm honored to do that. I'm grateful to do that. Um, so I think I've rambled on probably long enough for this video segment, and we'll pick up again later. I'm not going to be gone long. Um, I had a lot of family health issues to help people deal with, but we've gotten through that. Everyone's well and good, and um, I'm finally free to be back to business as usual, thankfully. And I'm going to be making lots more videos and telling you a lot more about me and my lessons and my experiences and my journeys so that you can learn to trust me and know me intimately so that you can then learn to trust yourself and know yourself intimately. And then collectively, we can be the great awakening together, right? Namaste. Take care. Love and light.